Imagine this. Every single day there are things you know you should be doing, like studying for that exam or working harder at the gym, but your brain keeps pulling you back to your comfort zone. Suddenly, scrolling on your phone or binge watching shows feel a lot easier. And here's the real question. Why is it that your brain resists the very things that could actually make you stronger, smarter and better? The truth is that your brain isn't broken, it's simply designed to protect you from the risk and the unknown. But here's the catch, you can actually rewire it. You can flip what I like to call a hidden switch in your brain, one that makes you want to do the hard things, not just tolerate them but crave them. And this isn't just some motivational cliche, there's a real science behind it. In fact, when I first learned about it, it reminded me of the protagonist from the anime, DANDADAN. Okarun isn't your typical overpowered protagonist. He starts out scared, awkward, even kind of weak. But the moment his hidden drive gets unlocked, he taps into something much bigger than just trying harder. His brain switches from resisting the struggle to embracing it, and that's exactly what we are going to explore today. So in this video we are diving deep into how to activate that hidden switch in your own brain, and there are 5 motivators that can trigger to flip this switch, and once you understand them you'll see why some people push through pain, failure and fear while others quit the moment things get tough. So stick with me, because by the end of this you'll not only understand what those motivators are but also how to use them in your own life. So let's get started. First up is curiosity. Curiosity is one of those strange powers we all carry inside us, but most of the time we overlook it. Think about it, not every time we push ourselves to do something hard comes from pure discipline or willpower. In fact, our brains are designed in such a way that discipline often feels exhausting, like dragging a big rock uphill. But curiosity, that's different. Curiosity is like flipping a hidden switch that suddenly makes even the hard things feel a little lighter. Here's the science behind it. The brain doesn't just reward us when we finish something. Instead, it rewards us in the middle of discovery. When we're curious about a problem or an idea, dopamine starts firing, not at the end, but at the very moment we are learning or discovering something new. This is why curiosity feels so addictive. It keeps us moving forward even when the task is difficult, because we want to see what comes next. Think about Okarun. He starts off as this socially awkward guy who gets thrown into these bizarre supernatural situations. At first glance, he has every reason to quit. Aliens, ghosts and powers he doesn't even understand. But what keeps him moving forward isn't just blind courage, it's curiosity. Every time something weird happens, his brain doesn't just see danger, it sees a mystery that needs to be solved. The unknown becomes exciting, and that excitement pushes him through fear and discomfort. In other words, his curiosity flips the switch that forces his brain to tackle things that most people would prefer to avoid. Now here's where it gets practical. I had a friend who hated going to the gym. He wanted to see the results for sure, but lifting weights just felt like a punishment for him. One day, instead of focusing on how to finish a particular exercise set, he started thinking, what happens if I try this movement differently? It then turned into a science experiment, and because his brain was now curious and not pressured, the workout no longer felt like an exhausting task. The hidden switch was flipped. But here's the thing, most people wait for motivation to arrive before starting. That's the trap. Curiosity works in the opposite way. You don't wait, instead you begin poking around, asking small questions, and therefore your brain creates the motivation along the way. Just like Okarun stepping into the unknown, the act of exploring is what makes the hard thing suddenly engaging. Then comes autotelicity. The word may sound fancy, but in psychology this idea means love the doing and not just the outcome. Think about the last time you were so deeply absorbed into something that you lost track of time. You weren't worried about what comes after, you weren't obsessing over results, you were simply doing it. That's what psychologists call flow, and brain science has shown that flow is one of the most powerful states of human performance. When you are in flow, your brain releases dopamine and norepinephrine, which sharpens your focus and makes you feel completely alive. And this is exactly what makes autotelicity so powerful. When you love the doing, the done becomes inevitable. But here's the catch, most people get stuck because they focus only on the finish line. They want the reward, the recognition and the success, but the brain doesn't light up chasing an abstract future. It lights up when the act itself feels meaningful. Therefore, the trick is to shift your attention away from the reward and into the rhythm of the work. Now let me make it more real and relatable. When I sit down to create a YouTube video, it doesn't start out smoothly. At first, it's a bit messy. I am researching, checking if the idea works, overthinking if people will actually click on it. But something changes when I focus on a topic and commit to it. Suddenly, writing the script doesn't feel like work. Instead, it feels like I'm uncovering something piece by piece. Recording flows naturally, editing pulls me in, and before I realize, hours have passed and the video is finished. At that point, it's not about the final outcome, it's about fully immersing yourself in the craft. That's autolicity in action. Therefore, if you want to force your brain to do the hard things, stop staring at the finish line. Instead, create an environment where you can enjoy the act itself. Remove distractions that pull you out of immersion and focus on how satisfying it feels to type the next sentence, to design the next screen, or to record the next scene. Because once your brain has experienced that immersion, it no longer feels forced anymore. Rather, it feels addictive. Then comes mastery. When you talk about forcing our brain to do the hard things, one of the most powerful motivators hiding inside us is the drive for mastery. Mastery isn't about perfection, it's about the hunger to get a little better every single day. Every time you make progress, even if it's small, your brain releases dopamine and endorphins, which are little hits of reward chemicals that make you feel good, and that feeling pulls you back to do it again. For example, even though Okarun carried the insane power of Turbo Granny inside him, he quickly realized that raw power wasn't enough. He still needed to become strong on his own. That's why he started training his body and pushing himself beyond his comfort zone. In one of the recent episodes, he even sought out boxing lessons from the alien Mr. Mantis Shrimp. Why? Because he knew that to stand a chance against the evil eye, he couldn't just rely on borrowed power. He had to master himself. That motivation to purposefully develop his skills was his hidden mastery switch turning on. But here's where it gets interesting for us. Most of the time when we face something difficult, we freeze because the goal looks too far away. It feels overwhelming, and that thought alone kills our motivation. But science shows that if we break down the big scary challenge into smaller learnable skills, your brain starts to reward you for the progress you make at each step. For example, let's say you want to start going to the gym. If you walk in thinking like you'll have a six-pack in 3 months, your brain will likely shut down. The goal feels too far away. But if you break it down into smaller steps, like focusing on learning how to do a proper push-up this week, or tracking the fact that you went to the gym 4 times in 7 days, your brain will suddenly see signs of progress. Each little win releases dopamine hit, and therefore you actually want to keep going back. The brain then begins to crave the progress and not just the result, and that's the magic of mastery. It turns hard work into a game in which you are leveling up bit by bit. Just like Okarun doesn't get stronger in one night, you won't either, but the more you practice deliberately at the edge of your abilities, the more your brain rewards you, and the more likely you are to stick with it even when it gets difficult. And then comes purpose. Purpose isn't just a motivational poster quote or some vague idea about finding your calling. It's actually a deep neurological driver. When your brain feels like what you're doing is meaningful, it doesn't just push you forward, it rewires your determination. Neuroscience shows that when we connect our actions to something bigger than ourselves, our brain releases oxytocin and serotonin. These aren't just feel-good chemicals, they are what keep us emotionally locked in, allowing us to push past through resistance and stay consistent even when the task is difficult. But here's the problem. Most of us try to force discipline without first anchoring it to purpose. That's like trying to drive a car without a gas. You can push it forward for a while through sheer willpower, but eventually you are going to burn out. That's why people start the gym in January and quit by February. Therefore, the trick is to anchor the hard task to a reason that feels personal, and this is where characters like Okarun helps us see it clearly. Something changes when supernatural chaos enters his life. He doesn't fight just because he suddenly has powers, he fights because he discovers purpose, protecting Momo and protecting the people he cares about. That becomes his anchor. His battles are insane, terrifying, and way beyond what a normal person could endure, but his brain doesn't back out. Why? Because every punch and every hard moment is connected to that deeper meaning. It's not about whether he wants to do it, it's about the fact that he has to do it because it matters to him. And that's exactly how our brain works. If you tell yourself, I need to work out today because I should, your brain will reject. But if you reframe it as, I need to work out today because this is how I show up strong for my family, or this is how I prove to myself that I don't quit on my goals, suddenly the same task feels different. Here is a simple practical way to use this. Before you start any hard task, write one sentence that begins with, this matters because. For example, this matters because finishing this project brings me closer to financial freedom. Or it may be like, this matters because learning this skill makes me the kind of person I want to become. You don't need to overthink it. Simply just anchor it. Do it every single time, and this small ritual rewires your brain to see the task not as a punishment but as a purpose. And finally, we have autonomy. You know what's funny? Sometimes the hardest part of doing the work isn't the work itself. It's the feeling that you are being forced into it. When you feel like you're just following orders or being dragged into something, your motivation plummets. But when you flip the script and feel like you choose to do it, suddenly it's not the same task anymore. That's where autonomy comes in, which is the freedom to choose how you work. Now think about Okarun. If it had been just an obligation, he would have broken down. But watch how he starts to grow the moment he finds freedom in how he fights. He adapts and improvises. He's still facing insane, impossible challenges, but because the autonomy is there, he leans into the difficulty instead of running away. The lesson here, when you can save the process, even terrifying hard things become doable. But here's the catch, most of us wait for external permission. We wait for the right time, the right mood, or something to push us. That's why hard tasks feel so heavy. Therefore, the trick is to flip the script and give yourself autonomy even within things you don't like. Let's say you hate going to the gym. Instead of following a strict routine someone else made, you create your own version, perhaps by choosing the music you love. Maybe you pick 3 exercises you enjoy or going at the time that fits your rhythm. The workout doesn't change much physically, but mentally it transforms into your choice and your brain suddenly starts cooperating instead of resisting. This isn't just a theory. Daniel H. Pink's book Drive breaks this down perfectly. He shows that autonomy is one of the 3 main drivers of motivation, in addition to mastery and purpose. When you give yourself even small freedoms, such as deciding how to structure a study session or when to take breaks, you activate the hidden motivation switch. Suddenly, your brain no longer feels being pulled to the work, rather it feels as it owns it. So the next time you face a hard thing, don't just push yourself harder, rather give yourself choices, even if they are small. At the end of the day, forcing your brain to do hard things isn't really about brute force, it's about learning how to flip those hidden switches inside you. Just like Okarun in DANDADAN, power comes from tapping into the inner spark and allowing it to drive you ahead. So the next time you're stuck, remember, your brain already has the fuel, you just need to light the match. Thank you for watching this video and I'll see you in the next one.